So I will be going through a number of different slides and covering some topics. If you have any questions, feel free to ask throughout the course of the presentation. I'll leave time at the end for any overarching questions that you might have or anything that I haven't covered that's sort of at the top of your brain. So I will dive right in. I'll be covering the program overview for our program, really going into depth about some of the key advantages of our program, like our clinical education, as well as our Berkeley community, talking a little bit about cost of attendance and financial aid and what that looks like for our students. And then I'll conclude the presentation talking a little bit about our admissions process and what that's going to look like for this upcoming cycle. So our program is a 4-year lockstep program for our Doctor of Optometry program. We kind of vary a little bit from year to year in terms of class size, but it tends to hover around 65. So it's pretty small in terms of its size, which is really fantastic. It allows students to get to know each other in the program and for them to become a really close community. And it also really allows for our faculty to get to know our students really well and to really watch them grow throughout the program as professional students getting ready to become clinicians once they graduate. The program is really a combination of didactic coursework and clinical training. During their first 2 years is really where that bulk of the coursework happens. And as students progress through the program, they shift away from the coursework end and they start to move more and more towards the clinical training end, ultimately culminating in their 4th year, which is when they're doing their externships and they're traveling to different locations to put their practice to use in different clinic spaces. Graduates of our program are able to diagnose, treat, and rehabilitate ocular issues. So that's really their focus area and what they cover as part of the program. Although, from my understanding of what our faculty encounter, the scope of optometrists is growing with each passing year. So there are so many opportunities for students to grow along with the profession and to be able to explore into different areas as they move further in their career. In terms of where students go after they graduate, some students might continue on to residency. They might decide to spend a year specializing in a subject area like pediatrics or low vision or binocular vision if they want to focus on those particular areas, or working within Veteran Affairs offices. So those are all opportunities that our students can pursue that if they're interested in and want support from those ends. We do also see them go into private practice. They sometimes work for HMOs or community health organizations. And there are a small percentage of students who go on to work in the industry as well. So we've actually seen a number of students who have gone to work for tech companies that are looking for consulting from optometrists to know a little bit more about how their products might impact the health of the eye. They might be working for larger companies like Bausch & Lomb or Alcon, also serving as consultants for those sort of larger companies that impact eye health. One of the ways that students are able to kind of navigate this path and figure out what really is the best fit for them is by tapping into our alumni base. We have been a program for a long period of time, and we have a large, really dedicated base of alumni that are involved with our students. It's really not uncommon for them to be present on campus, maybe just visiting or even coming for on-campus events where they're there to speak with our current students and kind of showcase what are the opportunities that they've pursued and be able to act as a sounding board for our students as they move through the process. They're also a really helpful resource when students have graduated and they need to tap into some of those networking connections. So there's really a strong focus on clinical education very early in the process. Students actually start learning day one in the program. So we have our students work within our preclinic space, which is right within our academic building. And within the preclinic space, they can go and test out some of the skills that they'd be using on a day-to-day basis, like setting up their workspace, interacting with the patients. In the preclinics, they'll be working with their fellow students or with faculty members, but it's a really great way for them to start getting more comfortable in terms of navigating that space. That way, once they start meeting with patients at the end of year 2, some of those things are second nature and they don't really have to think about them quite as much. And this slide really breaks down the different variety of patient encounters that students see in terms of their quantity and the quality and what that might look like for them. So at the end of their second year in the program, students start seeing patients in the clinic space. So our second year students are kind of starting that process now. They work in the clinic over the summertime, and then for their third year, they're spending primary part of their time in the clinic space, interacting with patients. And then for their fourth year, that's their externship period. And so they have 4 different the times that the year is essentially broken up to. For 2 times during that year, they'll be based at the Berkeley Clinic, working within those spaces in the specialty clinics we have there. And then for the other 2 parts, they'll be at off-campus locations, which can be a number of different places. I actually have a slide coming up that'll kind of showcase where those locations are to give you a sense of where our students go for their externships. But it's a really great time for them to kind of build their skills and get to practice in a lot of different spaces that they're not necessarily used to. And we really have a wide variety of different clinics that we tap into. So that top space there is our University Eye Center. And that clinic space is actually directly attached to our academic building, which is a little bit up the hill in this photo, which you can't necessarily see there. So it's really easy access for our students. If they're used to their normal everyday commute from classes, it's easy enough for them to just walk downstairs and to start interacting with patients towards the end of their second year. We also have what we call the Tang Center, which is that on the bottom, and that's a student health center facility on campus. It's a quick walk about 10 to 15 minutes away from our academic building, so it's still within the Berkeley campus, and that is also a clinic space that offers a variety of different patient encounters. It's helpful for me to note that these 2 clinic spaces are not just for Berkeley students, they're open to the entire Bay Area. And we have really built up a great reputation of being an accessible service for patients in the Bay Area. So we do see a lot of patients that come through during the course of the year that students are able to really practice their skills with. I actually was very fortunate. I had my first eye visit there recently within the past week over at the University Eye Center. I got to be reviewed by one of our 4th year students. It was a really smooth process. There's a lot of different pieces of equipment and technology they have there. And then at the end of the 4th year students assessment evaluation, one of our faculty members came in to double check all of their work. So they have that piece where they're able to bounce off and ask any questions with our faculty too. In addition to our on-campus clinics, during their 3rd year, students also have the opportunity to go practice at either the Marin community clinics, which are just about a quick drive away, or the Alameda Health System. And those are 2 different health systems in terms of how they operate and work with patients. So it's a really great way for our students to get exposed to a variety of different settings and how that might vary from their normal clinic experience. We also have a lot of different partnerships with Veteran Affairs offices. We have a number of residency opportunities that we coordinate through our office for students that are interested in these opportunities. And those offices know to expect that Berkeley students are going to be able to really deliver in terms of the service that they provide to their clients and their patients. So it's a really great way if this is something that you're interested in getting involved with. We have lots of great connections and can really help to kind of showcase those throughout the course of the program. And as I mentioned earlier, that 4th year is when they're doing their externships and rotating around to different sites. We actually have locations in 12 different states currently, although we're always looking to expand to more. So students can go to places like Miami, they can go down to Los Angeles, they can go to Honolulu if they're looking to experience and practice their optometry care in a completely different setting than they're used to. So it's a really great way to kind of be able to flex their muscles and get a little bit more practice during that 4th year. And this slide showcases our pass rate for the board exams, which is a really crucial part of the process to be able to certify our students to become doctors of optometry. As you might notice, the bluish line there is for Berkeley students and the reddish one is for the national average. So we do tend to perform better than the national average from year to year, as you can see as we've progressed through there. And that's really due in part to the rigor and the preparation that our faculty put into the curriculum, as well as the support that they receive as they move through the program in terms of being able to bounce questions off of faculty and really be able to build their skills with them. And on that note, as I mentioned earlier, we do have smaller classes from year to year. As a result, the faculty to student ratio is around 1 to 4. And that is a really great way. It allows for our faculty to get to know students on a personal level. Many of our faculty are clinicians who graduated from Berkeley. They have a lot of Berkeley pride, and they're always happy to support students throughout the course of the program. I know that, in some medical school settings, there can be that sense of strong competition or competitiveness. I can really say that our faculty support students in their program, and their focus is more so making sure that students have the skills that they need to succeed, rather than making sure that they might be competing with other students. So that strong sense of support and community is definitely present, and extended to the faculty as well. We do also have a number of faculty who actively participate in clinical research. We have our clinical research center, which is based within our campus. So it's a really great way for students to get exposed to that as well, if that's something they're interested in doing after graduating from the program. And just talk a little bit about our students and where they come from. Their backgrounds really come from a number of different areas. We don't require a specific major for those who are applying to the program. So we've seen biology majors, we've seen chemistry majors, we've seen nutrition majors, we've even seen a few music majors here and there. As long as they've completed the prerequisite courses to our program, they're welcome to apply. And all of those different perspectives and backgrounds really feed their way into the classroom space, which is fantastic for students to be able to tackle and ask questions about optometry from different spaces. We do see a good portion of students who come directly from undergrad. So they might have just finished up and they enter the graduate program. It's the fit for them, they're ready to tackle optometry. We see a good portion of our students who might take a gap year or two. They want to kind of spend a little bit more time exploring if that field is really a good fit for them, and to kind of spend more time in terms of self-exploring or building in their professional career. So that does make up a portion of our applicants and our students. And then there are some folks who might be coming from, maybe they graduated from a business degree and they worked as an optometric technician for a number of years. They were really inspired by the folks that they worked with there, and they want to apply to optometry. So they're making kind of a career shift, not necessarily within different fields, but into that sort of doctor side of the house that they haven't seen before. So that's a pretty common piece that we see as well. And in terms of where they come from location-wise, we do see a good portion of our students who are here in California. We see a number of students from Texas, from Florida, from Ohio, from Washington and Michigan. We also see a number of students who are international as well. We definitely see a good number of students who are coming from Canada, as well as other countries across the globe. And I know I mentioned earlier the sort of pathways that students can go into after graduating. Just to put some numbers to those, for our class of 2019 who graduated a few years ago, about half of them who completed our survey were planning on going into a residency program. So doing that 1 year intensive study where they were going to really build their skills in those areas. And about 40% of students were going on to work into private practice or joint OD ophthalmology practice. We know that's a really big question when students come in, is how to navigate that if they want to open up their own private practice, how to sort of manage the business side of that. So we do have a lot of really great programs that we offer for our students as they progress to kind of build up and bolster more of those skills of sort of the business management side that they might encounter if they decide to open up their own private practice. About 7% of students went on to positions in the corporate setting. As I was mentioning earlier, typically they might take positions as consultants within different agencies and different companies and areas. Those salaries can really range in terms of the position and the skills needed for those roles. There's lots of really great opportunities emerging there as well. In terms of engaging with the community as well, and in this sense, I'm not referring to community as just UC Berkeley, but also the Bay Area, and in some cases the US as well. We do have a number of community service programs that we offer here at Berkeley. They've looked a little bit different as the pandemic has progressed, but ideally we would love to be in a space where our students can travel or offer their services in person and be able to really give back to a lot of these different communities. Especially to folks who might not have quite as much access to optometric services. So all of these groups do that in a different capacity. If you're interested in any of them, definitely feel free to reach out. I'm happy to provide a little bit more information. I know that VOSH, the Volunteer Optometric Services to Humanity, in the past, they've even done trips outside of the US as well. So there's lots of opportunities to engage with different areas of community service as well. It's also helpful to note that our program is definitely rigorous and prepares students for their careers as an optometrist. But I think they also really spend a lot of time enjoying their experience as graduate students in the Bay Area. That might involve going for hiking or spending time at Lake Tahoe, which is both the left photo and then the bottom photo. It's just a quick drive up northeast of our campus. They might participate in intramural sports. They might take day trips into San Francisco or Oakland and go to see some of the parts of the city there. So they definitely make sure that they take time for their mental health and to enjoy their experience. They're here in Berkeley for 4 years and to really enjoy their time as graduate students. And it's also helpful to note that School of Optometry has a lot of different services that it provides, but we are also a small school within a larger campus. So our students are able to tap into all the different resources that are available to us through Berkeley. We actually recently went to our Pavilion where they had a basketball game with our team versus our rivals who are Stanford. And our student ambassadors actually got to host the table there and offer up some free swag to folks who are walking by. So it's a really great way. They got to get the game ball and they got to throw out t-shirts during the halftime. So we are pretty engaged with the Berkeley community too, as well, with the broader sort of UC Berkeley side. We're about halfway through in terms of the topic pieces. I just want to pause briefly to see if anyone has any questions thus far. Alrighty, I will dive back in. Like I said, there's time at the end for any overarching questions, so we'll definitely have any opportunities to answer them there. So this slide covers our cost of attendance, which is our tuition and fees, and then the living expenses. So those two pieces combined make up the cost of attendance. As you might notice, and these numbers are from a previous year, there is a separate cost for those who are residents and those who are non-residents. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. In terms of yearly expenses, these are all average costs for students across the Berkeley campus. I do want to note that there are lots of ways for students to kind of save on these expenses to make them a little bit less intimidating than they might be currently at the moment. You know, they might be living with a number of roommates, they might be living in a different portion of Berkeley, or they might choose to live in Oakland. And that's lots of ways for them to kind of save on the housing costs. There's lots of really great connections that students can tap into from second, third, and fourth year students that they can utilize to kind of save some of those costs too. Transportation costs here look a little bit high. I would say that most of our students actually live within walking distance to our campus, and Berkeley is a pretty walkable city. So oftentimes those transportation costs are a lot less than what they would typically look like from this end. We do offer financial aid for our students. So all students admitted to our program, regardless of their background or location, are offered our departmental award. And that is around $20,000 or so for the course of the 4 years in the program. So it's about $5,000 a year. For that first year, for students who are out of state or those who are classified as international, they would actually receive an additional $5,000 just for that first year to kind of accommodate as students are adjusting to campus life. Going forward in the program, there are also opportunities for additional funds like our professional student support funds that can be anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000, as well as our Alumnus of the Year Scholar Award. And those are all opportunities that are available in the second, third, and fourth years. We do also offer what we call our Graduate Opportunities Program Fellowship, or GOP Fellowship. There are 8 of those offered every year to new incoming students, and there is an application process associated with that. So students would need to submit an additional essay as part of the application process to be considered for that. And that offers additional funding during their first year of the program. In addition to our internal sources of financial aid, there are also additional outside scholarships that might be offered by the Academy of Optometry or other organizations or companies that are looking to sponsor students. So anytime those opportunities cross our plate, we are always reaching out to make sure that our students are aware of them. Some might be a really quick application process, some might be a little bit longer in terms of size, but those can really range in terms of the amount they're offered. But those can add up as well. So that's a huge way that students can save on some of their expenses is by applying for some of these smaller scholarships. In terms of loans, we do see that students might take out a portion of loans to cover some of the costs. For domestic students, they might take out our federal direct unsubsidized or PLUS loans. There is also the health profession student loan, which has a much lower interest rate, which we typically recommend to our students as well, which is a really great option. There are also opportunities to be work studies and earn a small stipend that can be used for living expenses or teaching or research positions, if that's something that students have done before, or if they haven't done it before and want to try it within the graduate setting, as well as a number of military scholarships or veteran waivers as well. So just to kind of dive into the admissions process, we have concluded for this past year for the students who are incoming for this fall. So the next cycle will be for fall 2023, and that will open up at the end of June. We utilize, and maybe you've heard this through other schools, a centralized application service called OptomCAS. So that is a space where students can apply to all the different schools of optometry across the US in one space. Makes it a little bit easier from your end as an applicant to not have to submit multiple documents, the same documents a couple times. We will be opening on June 30th, and then we are operating and rolling admissions. So there's a couple different deadlines that we'll be looking at, which I'll show in just a minute. Our final deadline to apply to the program is December 2nd of this upcoming year. So that's the final day in which we'll receive applications for next fall 2023. In terms of the application components, we have a couple different essay questions that we ask. We require 3 letters of recommendation. We typically suggest one from an academic source, one from an optometrist, and one from a supervisor, but those aren't strict rules. We really accept them from a number of different sources. The supplemental fee, which is required for Berkeley in particular, which is also a part of the application process, which is $66. And then for this past year, we were standardized test optional. For the next upcoming year, it hasn't been determined yet in terms of what that will look like. So once we've confirmed what the standardized test requirement will be, we'll post that on our website. So it may remain optional, it may be required. That's something that's still being sort of decided and in the works. And so just to give a sense for what that rolling admissions process looks like, so for example, our first deadline is August 15th. If an application is submitted before August 15th or on August 15th, and it's complete, it has all the application materials, that applicant will be entered into that first round. And what that means is that within 2 weeks of August 15th, they'll be informed if they're invited for an interview. The interview will then commence usually around sometime in September. And then once the interview is completed, they'll receive their final decision in about 3 to 4 weeks. So it's about 2 months from when that round starts to when it ends to when students get that final decision. So what we really suggest is that students apply earlier in the process. You'll hear your decision earlier from us, and then it also, in terms of where the spaces of the program are, the earlier you apply, the more likely that there are seats available in the program, as we do have a finite number for the class. This past year, our interviews were all in a virtual format, so that were held over Zoom. There was 2 components, an interview with a current faculty member and a student, as well as our student conversation piece, which is with our Berkeley Optometry ambassadors. That's currently under review for next year as well, so we may shift it to be in person, we may keep it virtual. Again, all of those decisions will be posted on our website, so that will typically happen at the end of April. And then the standardized test piece as well was optional for the previous year. So these are important dates to note. We have 3 rounds for this upcoming year. The first is August 15th, the second is September 30th, and that final round is December 2nd. In terms of requirements for what students need to have in place, they'll need to have a bachelor's degree by the time that they matriculate. So what that means is, let's say you're in your final year of your program that you're starting this upcoming fall. As long as you'll have your degree by the time you enter into the program, so by the time August 2023 rolls around, you're totally fine to apply. So for students who are considered seniors, you're definitely welcome to apply for this upcoming year. We don't look for a specific degree, so you don't have to have a specific major or any particular degree to apply to our program. We do look for a number of prerequisites that students need to complete. We currently have 13 different courses that we look for in terms of requirements. They don't all need to be done by the time that students apply. They can have up to 4 pending. So that might mean that maybe there's 4 courses like microbiology, psychology, calculus, and statistics that they're planning on taking in the spring. Those are completely fine. They're still welcome to apply to our program. We accept undergraduate, they can be all from your undergraduate institution. They can be from community colleges. They can be online courses. We're pretty flexible in terms of where those courses come from. So it's more important to us, the content that students are covering, more so than where those courses are necessarily coming from. We also say no double dipping here. And what that means is that one course can't count for 2 requirements. So for example, if you have taken microbiology, that could count for either microbiology or biology, but it couldn't count for both requirements. So it would have to be 1 individual course per each requirement. If there are courses that you've completed that you're not sure if they'll count, they seem like they might be, but it's not entirely clear, you're always welcome to reach out to myself or our team members to take a quick look, and we can let you know if it'll count towards the requirements. We also have what's called our prereq check request form, which is on this website here. And I'm happy to send out if you want the link as well. And that is a little bit more comprehensive in terms of what students need to submit. And that would have them, we would review all the courses and then let them know exactly which courses would count for which requirements. It's a really great reference as well in terms of what specific course components we'd be looking for from each prerequisite. So that's listed on this website as well. Just to talk about some qualitative considerations for what we look for from the application process. Experience in and knowledge of optometry is a really helpful component. Where we typically see that is from volunteering or shadowing or interning within an optometrist's office. So really getting to see what that day-to-day looks like for them and having a sense of what that would look like for you as an optometrist if you were to be working upon graduation from the program. The personal statement is a really important component to make sure that students and their long-term goals really match with our program and what we're able to provide for them. The letters of recommendation are a really key qualitative piece. Like I mentioned, those 3 letters in terms of where they come from, the academic source, the optometrist, and the supervisor. But again, if you wanted to have 2 academic and an optometrist or 2 optometrists and a supervisor, that's completely fine as well. Any activities or achievements that you want to showcase and outline from your experiences that are really pertinent in terms of your long-term goals in your career as an optometrist. If you took a gap year or 2, maybe noting some of the things that you did during them that really applied to your experience and what you would bring to the program, as well as the interview, which is a really key qualitative component. And this line covers a number of different attributes that we see as successful factors in students in our program and optometrists. This isn't a checklist. We're not looking to make sure that every student has hit all of these attributes, but there might be helpful things to note to kind of weave into your experiences and your personal statement and your essays. So, you know, maybe you were volunteering with an optometrist and you had interaction with a patient and it really showcased your ability to be organized and focused. That might be a really great example to include as part of your essays to kind of showcase some of those traits as part of the process. So in terms of other ways to connect with our office, we have our Ask an Advisor, our advising appointments. Those are typically appointments with myself. So if you want to schedule a time to talk one-on-one and work through some of your more specific questions, I'm always happy to help answer. And you're always welcome to schedule as many appointments as you would like. So definitely feel free to reach out if you want to meet sometime after this to kind of talk a little bit more about it. We have our fall conference, which is organized by our pre-optometry group here at Berkeley called the Foresight Group. And that's a really great event they hold virtually where students are able to learn a little bit more about different paths in optometry. And they really loop in some of our alumni and some of our current students to talk about their experiences as well. If you have the opportunity, we will be hosting our OptoCamp program, which will be virtually this summer. And it's a really great way for students to get the full experience and learn all the different aspects of optometry. all of our current students, well, some of our current students are camp counselors for the program. We even a number of different members of our community for Berkeley as well. And we really kind of cover the broader spectrum in terms of what students are able to do and what path they'll need to take to get to optometry. So that application typically opens in March, and that's posted on our website as well. We do host monthly webinars. Those will be starting up at the end of June. I do want to note that the webinars we host cover pretty much the same material that I covered today. So that's just a note if you're looking for some of those pieces. But if you want a refresher on some of those components, you're definitely more than welcome to attend those webinars. Our website has a lot of really great, fantastic information. And then we also have our monthly newsletter that goes out, which is called Blink. So if you're interested in getting involved in that and hearing more about it, definitely let me know. This is our physical location on campus. All of our staff members are currently hybrid, so some days we're in the office, some days we're not in the office. You're always welcome to reach out to us via email first if you want to schedule a time to chat, or even just to see if we're on campus to kind of meet and chat with us. So that concludes the presentation. I will open it up to any questions you might have about the program or Berkeley or paths as optometrists.
Yes, I can get started. I did have two questions that I wrote down. You mentioned that standardized test is optional. I just want to confirm by that you mean like the OAT, or yeah, just to make it clear.
Yes, so we accept all standardized tests actually. So we've seen students submit the OAT. I would say out of the standardized tests we receive, probably about 90 to 95% of them are the OAT. But we've seen students submit the GRE, the MCAT, the DAT. So we accept all of them. So it would be across the board that it would be optional for them. But I would say more often than not, we tend to see the OAT out of all of them.
Oh, okay. Makes sense. Thanks. And then my other question was, what was the interview style like? Is it like open or closed book when you're interviewing with the faculty member and the student?
Yeah, so currently it's open. I think it depends a little bit on the faculty member and the interviewer. I would say most of our faculty don't tend to read through the full application themselves, but they don't have it in front of them either as part of the interview process. So they might have glanced at it at some point in the process, but usually, you know, I think a lot of our faculty interviewers and our student interviewers, they kind of want to get to know their student from the first experience of the interview. So they don't oftentimes like to, but they do have access to the applications. The questions there really kind of assess students' interest in optometry as a field, their interest in Berkeley. There are a few scenario questions too, in terms of how they would interact with patients. So that's typically been the structure in terms of that 30-minute time period.
Okay, thank you.
I'm happy to stick around for a few more minutes if there are any lingering questions. If you don't have any questions, you don't have to stay for the rest of the time. I'm also happy to put my contact info there. So if you have future questions and you want to reach out, I'm happy to be a resource for that as well.
Thank you so much on behalf of our whole club. This was really informative and helpful. Thanks for taking time out of your day. We all appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Happy to help.
Thanks.
And if anyone wants to schedule a time to chat or if anything comes up later, definitely feel free to reach out.
Sounds good. Thank you.